I've never walked alone. Nah. 'Cause you're faithful to the end, and closer than a friend, and your love will never fail. In every season you are there. Faithful.
Um, I hope everybody leans in as I ask this question. I think it is a controversial question. Um, and it will get people arguing or defensive with the quickness. And so I'm going to start by asking you because you're the one in front of me. And my question is, are you a jealous person? Do you ever feel, would you categorize yourself as someone who struggles with jealousy?
Well, the Sunday school answer is I want to say no,
Right? What's
but
the truth?
I guess if I'm quite honest, my answer would have to be, yeah, sure. I mean, I think to some extent we all are, but I find myself, I probably do need to put myself in that category because I do sit and I become jealous of other people because maybe things appear to be easy or everything works out for them. Why don't they go through the troubles that I go through? Or, I guess to some extent like that.
See, that's me because I'm not jealous that someone has something I don't have. Like if you go on 700 vacations a year, I might silently judge you how you afford it, but I'm not jealous of it. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
And I'm not jealous that like your house is newer or bigger. I might be jealous if you have a cuter bag than me. But I mean, when other than bags and shoes, I'm not really a materialistic person. But I feel like that because I am such a mess, I am jealous that other people have it together better than me
Yeah.
and that they don't struggle like I do, or maybe they don't appear like they struggle like I do.
Maybe some of mine is just kind of like too, it's why I get jealous over why are you heard, but I'm not heard. I'm, why do you get to speak your mind? I don't get to speak my mind, too.
Yeah. I do. Well, and what I've been like pondering, Daddy used to call it muttering. He's going to
Muttering.
mutter on something. And I've been muttering about it lately. And I've come to realize that for me, it's not that I'm jealous. I'm not content. And maybe they kinda go hand in hand a little bit for me because my jealousy doesn't stem from materialistic things. It's more from a, "Why are you normal and I am weird?" kind of thing. But I'm really beginning to realize that I have spent the majority of my life not content with where I was in my life or the job I had or the house I lived in or whatever, that and I can give a prime example. This is a materialistic thing, but just track me right here. Um, Years ago when my kids were little, Abe was turning 2, we bought like an acre and a half of land and we put a mobile home on it. And I was lost as a goat. Shane was not walking with the Lord, and we were as feral as they come. And a lot of things happened while living in that house that held kind of bad memories for me. We lived there for a while. And I came to, know the Lord while living there. We started going to church. We started getting our life kind of on track. You know what I'm saying? And I just looked around and was like, I can't live here anymore. Literally, announced to my husband one day, I can't live here anymore. And because he is the greatest, sweetest man ever, he went, okay, find us a house. So we moved. Now that was in like, oh gosh, the early 2000s. I can't even remember when, the early 2000s. And so recently I made this statement to him, I wish we had land. And when I said that in that instance, the Lord brought back to my mind, well, I gave you land one time, but you were so feral, you didn't even appreciate it then. And that's where it stirred the muttering for me a little bit is I've just kind of begun to realize that I've spent the majority of my life God answering my prayers, giving me things, protecting me from things, removing me from tables because I did not belong at that table. But I remain jealous and discontented because in that moment, that's not what I wanted, or it is what I wanted to now all these years later be like, oh. And so I think my question is now is when you realize you've spent a majority of your life in that place, how do you how do you think you live with not have I mean, we all have regrets. I mean, hindsight's 2020, let's be
Right,
real, because
right,
the
right.
person I am today, the healed version of me, is looking back at that unhealed woman. You know what I'm saying? And I have a lot of
Yeah.
empathy and sympathy for her. But it's easy at the same time to get so caught up in that with the guilt and the regret and the shame of it that then you're not content with where you are right now.
Let me mutter. Let me mutter on that.
True, it's this cycle, and
Yeah.
I see it as an attack from the enemy, I really
Yeah.
do. I recognize that's what it is, and I don't specifically have answers other than what I have chosen to do is to thank God for the things I have right now. Thank you for the land that you gave me then, even though I didn't appreciate it, and thank you for the grass that's under my feet where my home sits today. And thank you if you give me, a different plot of grass in the future. But just, I think that for me is to stop focusing on what everybody else has. Not materialistic. Stop focusing on, well, she's not struggling. Well, I don't know what's going on with her at the same time. Am I making sense what I'm saying? Or are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
thinking that
yeah.
I have lost my mind?
No, I mean, I think it's first, I think everybody deals with that, and I think that's probably one of the reasons in the 10 Commandments, is not to covet, your neighbor's things. I mean, because I think that's a tendency for all of us to be a little discontent with what we have or where we are and all. Some of it, I think it comes from just for us, it might be a little bit more exceeding because of there wasn't for example, for me, I always felt, I guess you could say jealous if that's what the word we're gonna use, is that people could say they came from my hometown is X. Well, I don't have a
Yes.
hometown. I don't have any place I can call home. There's not a home that we go back to. Like my kids they come home, they in their words, they come home to visit. We don't have that. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes that's where some of mine is. I wish I had a place that have roots. So now I can kind of say, okay, this is my home. I mean, I've spent 30 years here being married to John. So yes, now this is my home. But I can remember for me, that was some of I think my problem is that I can look and everybody has these lifelong friends and they're still friends and that in some ways, that's the way I raise my children. Is you're supposed, in school, make these friends so you'll have all these friends, um, for the rest of your life. And quite honestly, I get tickled at him. I think it's only John William that still talks to his two friends, from high school because life, it, our concept changes and that's not the way it's supposed to be. I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but I think we all struggle. And for us as preachers' kids, I think it's a little bit more because we never had our own house. We lived in somebody else's house. We didn't have our own things. You were constantly handed down. You had to take what somebody else gave you, So it was
Mhm.
never, for me, never like my own stuff. So I guess that kind of did start with the discontent in me, but now I'm at the point of sometimes it's just kinda like, do I really don't get me wrong, I still need stuff, but I find that I don't do for myself because on the flip side of it is like, well, do I really deserve it? If that kinda makes sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Well,
And
and it
John gets so
really
mad with me sometimes, I'm sorry. So it's just like, "Just go buy it. Just go buy it," you know?
well, and see, and it really ticks me off with the enemy because
Mm,
if I step back and look at the graciousness of other people when daddy was a pastor back in the 80s and all that, the 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 graciousness of others, and but yet it almost like he took it and twisted it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's where I get so frustrated with the enemy because sometimes the attacks that I deal with from the enemy are not these major pull the rug out from under me things. Now sometimes they are, but for me, it's the daily twisting of things. The smallest little tweak that
Yeah.
causes me the biggest issue. Like you were talking about right then, of us not having the family home to go back to, and to visit, and how that tweak can then stir discontentment up.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like, and I guess he knows how to push everybody's buttons differently, but he just, Peter talks about how he's like a roaring lion. And no, he's not like this meek, mild kitten. But man, that lion sure is sneaky sometimes, and it's like he sneaks up on you and you don't recognize it.
Well, you take even the serpent. I mean, he used a serpent who described in scripture as the most crafty of the animals. I mean, it's the one way to describe him as being crafty because he can twist a circumstance. And if you watch a lion too, I was sitting here watching our cat, not that she's a lion. Of course, John calls her Satan all the time. I mean, he literally does. He calls her Satan. So that's a good we have a Satan cat, so I guess a miniature lion. But when you watch her, how she, kinda wants to sneak up, she'll creep out trying to catch the birds that are out at the bird feeder, and you watch her as she crouches down and she
Mhm.
slowly is walking, I mean, it's a good indication of how Satan uses he crouches in and takes those situations and twist 'em, and, I guess that's about what it's meaning about being on guard.
Well, and the thing is, don't we put if we feel discontentment and jealousy and shame and regret and all those things, we put that on ourselves. We don't put it on the enemy. We only put major issues in our lives on the enemy, which I hate to break it to anybody, and maybe it's just me, but about 90% of those are usually me, not the enemy, because I'm dumb. And I set that one up myself. You know what I'm saying? I moved that mountain right in front of me as an obstacle all by myself. No help from anybody. But I think that we don't wanna claim the little things as attacks because we're in control of that.
Mm, mhm.
We should have more control of ourselves. We should do this and we should do that. When what if it's those little things that build? Because I hate to tell you, sometimes my husband might do something that's just a little annoying. And then the next day, he'll do something that's a little more annoying, and then the next day, he'll do something that's a little more annoying, and before long, I'm yelling at him, but I'm really yelling at
Typical.
him because it was a progression, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with him, it's because I'm in a foul mood. Do you know what I'm saying? He's really not being annoying, I'm just in a foul mood. Well, isn't it the same way that what if the enemy does these things little bits at the time, and they go so unnoticed, and then next thing you know, you're like going down the rabbit hole of somebody's social media, like putting them on blast. Like, you know, you're just judging and seeking someone out, like to put that on when it's really just an attack of not being content or an attack of jealousy or whatever.
But if you look at what Paul says in Philippians 4, you know, verse 11, he was saying he wasn't saying these things because he was in need, because then he goes, "For I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. It wasn't like he came with it all together.
Mhm.
You know, he says he learns. I think we have to learn. And then I'm sorry, I'm looking at this the verses. Then even on down in verse 12, he goes, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every circumstance, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And then the verse that everybody loves to quote, I can do all things through him who gives me strength, which I love how my preacher says, he's like, "That's not so you can be athletic and win a ball game." But it's not like it's through Christ that we can learn to be content. And maybe it's that we take when you have those moments of weakness, of the enemy has given you the little bit you've been annoyed, and then you have that one last final straw that maybe we just need to start taking it and just being honest. You know what, last week we talked about being humble. Maybe we need to be humble and take it to God and say, I'm struggling with this today. I'm struggling with being content. I know you've given me all this and, but I'm struggling today. I'm being attacked in this area. Maybe that's what we need to
Well,
do and just be honest.
and the key is learned.
Yeah, the
It's
learned.
not it's not that we come into this world knowing it and then we become a believer and it's just given to us. It's not one of the fruits of the spirit. It's
Right?
learned.
Learned.
It's a learned behavior to be content. And I think that God also wants us to have dreams and goals. He tells us to have desires. He gives us desires. And so I do think that we're not supposed to stay stagnant by any stretch of the means. But I think that for me, it's what yardstick am I using to measure the
Mm,
things?
mm.
Am I measuring my yardstick of growth and moving forward by the journey God has me on, or is it the journey that the world says I should be on? Struggle to I can't say this word, differentiate the two sometimes.
Yeah.
Those sticks get blurred for me a lot, if I'm just being honest. Just knowing, okay, what does God want for me? And what does the world want from me? Like, what voice am I hearing? Which one is louder right now? I do. I struggle to have that discernment to know.
It makes sense because see, I deal with like having a problem saying I won't X or even down to I want to go do whatever, because I feel selfish in saying what I want. And maybe that's some of the problem is I don't know, do we really know what we want? Do we even
Oh,
know what we want to ask for? Or we just I catch myself, so I'm not blasting anybody of wanting to live life like somebody else. But do I really know what I want?
that's just like the thing. There's a meme going around talking about, are you I'm going to misquote it. It's either are you jealous of or are you comparing what God has given you or measuring up against what the enemy has given someone else. That's totally wrong. But the whole point of it is, are we measuring ourselves based on someone who the enemy is all over? Like the enemy, they're so far from God is the point. You know what I'm saying? And what the enemy comes after those that are a threat, correct? And so
Correct.
it's like, is this something the enemy has them here and then you're comparing yourself to that? And that just kind of stopped me in my tracks.
And two, on that note, you can take it as, you know, when we read in the Bible about idol worshiping, we want to look at it as only little statues, So, those in the world that have all these things, they might be idolizing all the money and their things and stuff. So, that's where we have to be careful. And it's like you say, it's a balance. God wants to give us good things. You look at Abraham. Abraham was a very blessed, he was a very wealthy man. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it goes back to, I guess, our posture of our heart and what are we actually, worshiping. Does that make sense?
Yes, because
So,
I think about when the Israelites built the golden calf. And
mhm.
I think
After
about, Moses goes up on the mountain. For those that don't know the story, Moses goes up on the mountain. He's up there getting the 10 commandments. And, before he leaves, the people are like, "We love God. God is great. Moses, you go hear from God. We are going to be here waiting on you." And then he leaves and they're like, "He left us. We're screwed. This is over. We're in the middle of nowhere. Our life is over." And then Moses' brother Aaron's like, "Dude, I got y'all. I got y'all." So they like devise this plan and they like give all their gold and they make this calf. And spoiler alert, Moses comes down and he's like, "What in the world is going on?" And Aaron's like, "I don't know. I just threw some gold in a fire and it popped out a cow. I don't know what happened." But basically, the people gave up on God and they were going to worship this golden calf. That's like the story in a nutshell. But I often think about the person that thought to themselves, "No, I said God was God and I was going to worship him." But at some point, they caved in and gave into the crowd and gave their gold. And I'm concerned for myself how many times I walk out of church and I'm telling you, I would fight fire with a water pistol. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm ready to go. And then I get out in the world and I'm like, "Well, if you want my gold, here you go." I just allow myself to get turned. I don't stand steady and firm. It's easy for us to judge the Israelites, every single one of them for doing it, but yet we do the same thing every day.
Yeah. 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 And I don't know, maybe some of it that comes from too is for me, some that are in the world are so loud. I don't I shrink down. I don't want the confrontation. So
Because if
okay,
they're
here you
so
go.
loud, how could they be wrong?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
must be the one that's wrong.
Goes back to the enemy twisting the things. It all all comes down to we need to be on guard. And
Every
maybe
day.
I need to take a moment before I act and ask, is this true? Go to the source. Is this true, Lord? Or is this being twisted? And I don't do that. I don't take a moment to stop and ask. I just respond.
I think we all do
Yeah.
because we're acting in our flesh.
Maybe that's where it
And
comes back to being to learn. Well, you can't learn if you just jump.
All right, y'all, that's a wrap for today's episode. If something in this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or just made you feel seen, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Send it to a friend, drop it in a group chat, or post it on your story. That kind of support means the world to us. You always find every episode, updates, and more over at therecoveringpreacherskids.com. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next time.